All right, let's talk Green Bay Packers. Obviously, one of the top contenders in the NFC, looking to take a big step going off of just making the playoffs, now heading to a deep postseason run. And to that end, you need obviously early round picks and big time acquisitions to step up. But one thing that can really facilitate is these steals, these unheard of guys emerging out of nowhere and being key contributors where they can step in. And there's one guy in particular that looks like he could be that kind of massive steal, that kind of hidden gem diamond in the rough. We'll get to all that in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick, that is Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Packers, of course, very solid offseason, relatively quiet compared to the 2024 standards, where they added guys, of course, like Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney, but they made some decent moves to improve the roster, put them in a situation to contend in a brutally tough NFC North. But there's one guy, one under the radar addition, an undrafted free agent that's gotten a little bit of buzz. But when I think you break down this kid, and I'm talking about Tyron Herring from the University of Delaware, defensive back, yeah, that's a name you probably haven't heard a whole lot about. I think you'll hear a whole lot more about him as we work our way through training camp and preseason, because he has the physical attributes and some key factors here that I think gives him a great chance to not only make this roster, but to be a contributor. So first and foremost, let's pull up his strengths, courtesy of NFL.com, his draft profile, just to highlight what I'm talking about here. Then we'll get into some interesting data. So his strengths from Herring is he plays with an excellent blend of NFL size and length, plays with good field vision from zone, uses size to tilt 50-50 balls in his favor. He's quick to pounce on the pass catcher and in the play, possesses size and strength to help in the run game. All right, so the big takeaway here, and this is really one of two parts that make up an undrafted free agent steal. You got to have two things if you're going to be a steal if you go undrafted, right? Obviously, if you're a great football player, if you're an elite prospect, you wouldn't have gone undrafted. You would have gone, first, second, third rounders, or at least drafted at some point. What you have to have, number one, is you have to have an NFL frame, an NFL body, NFL athleticism. It doesn't matter how good you are as a player. If you're a 5'4" wide receiver, it ain't going to cut it, right? If you're a 260-pound offensive lineman, it ain't going to cut it. If you're a running back that runs a 4.9, doesn't matter how good you are, ain't going to cut it, right? Do you have an NFL frame? Do you have NFL athleticism? And if you look at the strengths report here, again, courtesy of NFL.com, it's clear Herring checks that box. Okay, he's got an NFL frame. He's got an NFL body. He's an NFL athlete. Okay, that's the first part. The second part is, do you fill a need? Do you address a problem? Obviously, again, if you're an undrafted free agent, you're not going to address a lot of problems. You're not going to be an elite playmaker, a superstar player, but do you have a certain skill set that jumps out the page that makes you better than a lot of other players, not just rookies, but veterans in general, that could really elevate your team? And I think one of the underrated aspects of Tyron Herring is his ability to tackle and limit yards after catch, right? He is extremely good at this. Let me highlight what I'm talking about. Let's pull up this graphic here. So this is yards after catch per reception. This is Herring versus top rookie corners in the 2024 NFL draft. And you can go from left to right. You've got Trey Amos, who's a second-round pick. You got Jedi Barron, who was a first-round pick. And you got Travis Hunter, obviously a first-round pick. Everyone's familiar with Hunter. He won the Heisman Trophy. And there on the far right, of course, you got Herring, again, undrafted free agent for the Green Bay Packers. And you can see all of the guys, Amos, Barron, and Hunter, they get a little over 4 to about 5 yards after catch per reception, right? That's how many yards they give up after the catch per reception they surrender, right? So again, this is, a guy catches a slant on you and he falls forward for 5 yards, or you're not able to get him on the ground and he gets 20 yards after catch, whatever it may be, however it ends up going down, yards after catch per reception, limiting the damage after you give up the catch. Herring is significantly better than all of these guys when it comes to this specific factor. He is really darn good, and his scouting report highlighted it as well, that he's very quick to close on receivers, when they catch the football, and he gets them on the ground. That's an underrated aspect, because a lot of times when we talk about cornerbacks today, especially how much zone coverage is played in the National Football League, tackling is such a critical component to any defense, and having an elite tackler as a depth piece, obviously that has a key role in making the roster as a special teams player, but having a key tackler as a depth piece, a guy that can develop into a quality player across the board, is a hidden attribute. Getting guys on the ground is an underrated aspect of the game, and it's actually an area where the Packers could use, they're already okay at it, but they could definitely use a little bit of improvement. In fact, if we pull up our next graphic here to highlight what I'm talking about, this is looking at the current Packers starters in the secondary. Pull up a few of them here, looking at the cornerback position. You can see Carrington Valentine, you got Nixon, you got Hobbs, obviously the new addition. All of those guys, you look at Valentine and Nixon, they're solid just north of 4. That's not bad at all. Nate Hobbs all the way up to almost 6. That is a big red flag. And, of course, you got Herring. College numbers, I understand it's not apples to apples. I just want to throw it up there on the screen so that way everyone can understand kind of what a reference that we're talking about here. a little bit better than Valentine, Nixon, and Hobbs. What you can see is while the Packers are solid at it, certainly Nixon and Valentine, Hobbs a little less so, they could improve slightly. They could get a little bit better at it. And again, this is an underrated part of playing the cornerback position in the National Football League. Can you get receivers on the ground? And sometimes it's not making or missing the tackle, right? Obviously, that's important, but it's does the receiver fall forward for 3 or 4 yards after the catch? Is it a quick out for 5 yards and he's able to bowl through you and fall forward and make it an 8-yard gain, or do you get him on the ground right there? And it's a big difference, right? 2nd and 5 is a whole lot different play calling situation than 2nd and 2. That's the kind of element that I think Herring brings to any defense. He did it collegiately. I get it, small time competition. There's a reason he was undrafted. But when you look at the value he can provide in this specific area, I think there's a great chance he makes this Packers roster if he can showcase this, of course, through the training camp and preseason. Because like I said there, just to kind of put a bow on this, is that undrafted free agents need to fit into 2 buckets. They need to have NFL athleticism, NFL frames, and they got to do at least one thing exceptionally well. Like a great slot wide receiver, we see them all the time that go undrafted. They're not going to win the 50-50 ball. They're not good blockers. They're not great intermediate guys. What are they really good at? Running those little whip routes and getting open 5 yards away from the line of scrimmage to convert 3rd and 4, right? That's what these undrafted receivers made a name of. There's a lot of great examples of similar kind of situations. I look at Herring right here compared to the rest of the Packers starters. When I look at Herring compared to the rest of the quality corners in the 2025 NFL draft, it's clear to me that he's one of the best corners coming out into this class when it comes to getting receivers on the ground and limiting the damage after the catch. That is an underrated aspect of the game. And because of that, paired with his NFL frame, I think he has a great chance not just to make this roster, but to develop and contribute into a quality player long-term for the Green Bay Packers. All right, Miles, I know I threw a lot at you. I'm curious what your thoughts are when it comes to the Packers secondary and, of course, Herring. But first, Green Bay fans, in the comment section below, how about this? Let's switch up the gears a little bit. Who is the greatest undrafted free agent, in your opinion, in Packers history, right? This could go a bunch of different ways because there's a lot of names that pop into my head, but you kind of have to figure out, you go older, it's a little bit different era, but there's obviously some great ones in the, yesteryear, but there's been some really good steals over the past really decade and a half as well, too. So in your opinion, who is the greatest undrafted free agent in Green Bay Packers history? Let us know in the comment section below. And while you're down there, make sure you sign up for our free Substack. There's a link in the description below. Again, it's a free weekly newsletter. Doesn't cost you anything. Get a lot of extra content. In fact, we even highlight the best comments of the week. So if you have a great comment, you may see it in the newsletter. So make sure you sign up. Again, 100% free. Linked in the description below. But Mize, enough from me about this. What are your thoughts on this latest news out of Green Bay?
Yeah, Nick, the more at first when you brought up the name Tyron Herring to me, I'm like, who the heck is that guy? Like, who is this guy? The more I look into him, the more I see him. There's a lot to like about this guy. Obviously, he's got the size. He's got the, statistics wise, when you bring him up against some of the better players in the draft and even on the Packers team, he looks really good. But there's some other things I think that stand out about him as a player that we on this channel like, then I think everyone in the greater football watching world likes as well. So first, us on this channel, when you see guys, undrafted free agents, come into the team and you got to see these guys, you want to see how do they make it in. They got to be mature. They got to be able to, be a grown up, come in and fight early on. There's really no slack for an undrafted free agent. You have to come out and hit the ground running. And when you look at a guy like Tyron Herring, he's done a really good job of that in his career. One thing we really like is guys who are able to transfer schools early on in their career in college and continue that train. This is a guy started out at Dartmouth his first 2 years, transferred over to Delaware, did a lot of good stuff there at Delaware, named a team captain in his last year at Delaware. Like that, guys that are team captains, that's always a nice, grown up learning. He's able to come in, lead a team that he wasn't originally a part of. I think that's a really nice attribute here for Tyron Herring. Obviously, he's got the size and physical attributes here. But the other thing people would knock on and said, okay, all of that's really nice, but this is a guy, he's playing at Delaware. The size of competition he's playing isn't necessarily top tier. But when you look at what he did against some of the top talent in the college football world at the East-West Shrine Bowl, there's people that are saying that this guy stood out and he did really great stuff. Talking about, I'll read the little blip from the article talking about how he stood out at the Shrine Bowl. It says Herring played at Dartmouth and Delaware, so he needed a big week to show scouts he can make the jump to higher level competition. He exhibited good hands on an interception in the second quarter, also had a big hit on wide receiver Blaine Taylor from off coverage, knocking the ball out after the catch. Players from the FCS level programs can get more mileage out of strong performances in all-star games, and Herring took full advantage of his opportunity. So, boom, right there, showing that this guy, when put up against tougher competition, when put up against guys in the all-star game, really solid players all around, he did really good. And again, he rose to the occasion and showed that he was a solid player. So I'm liking Herring the more I look into him. I think he's a really interesting prospect for this Packers team. And I think the fact that he fits a role that the Packers were already struggling in gives him just that much more leverage on potentially making this roster. So for me, when I look at Herring, I think this is a really good, option for the Packers. I think he could sneak in there and be the next Packers undrafted free agent to make the team, potentially go on to be your next favorite undrafted free agent. Never know, but we're going to have to see. Just everything we're hearing about Herring so far, it all sounds good. I know it all only matters when you get onto the field. We're going to start to see him preseason. How does this guy look when he matches up against, other NFL caliber players? I think that's going to be the first real test for him. But so far, everything sounds really good for Tyron Herring.
And you bring up a great point with the Shrine Bowl. I think that's one thing where you can really look at some of these guys that played at lower levels of college football and pair them against the elite of the elite, whether it's FCS, lower level D1, to say, okay, do you stand out? Is there something about you, right? If you're an NFL guy at one of these these all-star games like the Shrine Bowl, for example, everyone's always looking for, okay, are you different, right? Because NFL players, NFL athletes, guys who make NFL teams, guys who contribute at the NFL level, there's something physically different. They stand out. We can all see it when we watch college football on Saturdays. You can just notice an NFL guy. He's bigger, stronger, faster, better athlete, makes plays different than everybody else. There's just something about him, and that's what we saw from Herring at the Shrine Bowl. And I think that's something that the Packers saw. Now, look, there's a lot of things that are a little bit of concerning. If you look at Herring, to be totally honest, again, there's a reason he's undrafted. Lower level college football concerns, that's valid. But the reality is he never was 100% elite at the FCS ranks, right? He was always solid, always steady, super consistent. You got to love that. But he never was like an all-American superstar, award-winning cornerback at the FCS ranks. A very good player, but never emerged as an elite. Now, that's not a knock on him necessarily. There's a lot of factors that can go into it, but that's a concern, I think. And that's one of the things we're going to have to see from Herring going forward is, does he have that skill set to evolve into in this defense in the National Football League as we work our way through training camp? And the fact that he showcased a lot of potential elite traits during the Shrine Bowl makes me think the fact that he wasn't, all award winner kind of guy at the FCS level, that there were other factors going into it. Maybe it was the coaching scheme, maybe it was the roster around him, maybe he was still developing, whatever it may be. The fact that he really stood out at a high level at the Shrine Bowl makes me think that the concern that he's not an elite player, that can be mitigated. Now, look, there's other questions about his speed and quickness. We'll have to see once he gets into training camp and preseason if he's able to overcome some of those deficiencies. But he certainly has the size. He certainly has the tackling capability. He's a willing corner. He does have those ball skills. You brought up the Shrine Bowl performance, 5 career interceptions as well, so he can make interceptions when the opportunities are there. I think he'll slide in and really make this roster. I think he's got a good chance to do it, whether it's a practice squad or final 53. I'd actually slide him in as a final 53 because I think his size, strength, and tackling make him a prime candidate to be a special teams ace. But don't be surprised, Green Bay fans, if you hear this name a lot over the next couple of years as a young defensive back that continues to develop and get better. He's certainly someone to keep an eye on.